All right, let's get started. So, hey everyone, how's it going? Thank you guys for sticking around during lunchtime. I know that it's 12 o'clock. So, today we're going to talk about the power of NFT groups. My name is Steven. I'm one of the co-founders of Castle, and actually a pretty good segue if you stuck around for the last talk. We're actually currently building on top of Gnosis Safe and are working really closely with the team. So, a bit of more background on myself and what we're building at Castle. Basically, we're starting out right now with a interface on top of Gnosis Safe, built as a smart contract wallet specifically for NFT collectors. So we have direct integrations with a lot of marketplaces such as OpenSea, Genie, and Gem, as well as a native portfolio tracker to make it really easy for both groups as well as individuals who want to leverage smart contract wallets for collecting NFTs and for greater security. So jumping into sort of just the topic of NFT groups, a background on why groups and squads are really powerful. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of the Squad Wealth article by the Other Internet, but one of my favorite excerpts is that some people believe new software can liberate individual creators, but this kind of thinking eventually leads to Uberized platform-mediated wage labor, and we want to liberate squads. The group is the basic user class for the tools we need today as a society, yet few pieces of software allow the squad as a whole to produce cooperatively and generate wealth together. And I think this is really interesting where crypto and Web3 are really right now at the intersection of financial and social products, especially with the emergence of DAOs and NFTs. And I think this could lead to a world where a lot of people have greater access and be able to win together as a group, as well as share a lot of the positive vibes with those around them. So start to jump into the different types of NFT groups and just Web3 groups out there, starting out with collector groups. These are probably the most prominent types of groups today. So collector DAOs is one of the biggest and sort of fastest rising category of DAOs out there. A lot of notable names such as Flamingo DAO, Fingerprints, and other folks there. NFT funds is also something that's extremely popular and rising. So these are generally groups that are focused on acquiring cultural collectibles as an investment vehicle, and they're generally structured just as a standard fund with LPs. Gaming guilds is obviously another big category that we saw rise with Axie Infinity, and they actually range from a variety of different sizes, from like very large guilds such as YGG, all the way down to smaller guilds with just like groups of friends who are coming together, and they're generally focused on acquiring gaming NFTs or assets as an investment vehicle or a revenue generating asset. So whether it's like NFT land as an investment or actual like Axie Infinity NFTs that they're lending out to scholars, they're setting up as a group and really forming a large guild to be able to operate this profitably. And they're oftentimes either structured as a standard DAO as a fund or fairly unstructured if it's just like a group of friends coming together to collect these NFTs. Project DAOs is something that I'll dive deeper into. This can kind of be structured in a bunch of different ways, but there's a few main types that I'll talk about today. The first one is just like generally focused on acquiring NFTs from a specific type of project to either gain influence within the community or just to help grow the community itself. So notable ones include like Moonbirds, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Azuki, they all have sort of like subgroups within their communities that are forming up to collect a lot of those assets. And then a lot of times today we're also seeing NFT projects themselves setting up formally as a DAO and representing ownership of the community or the project via the NFT. And then lastly, friend groups is one that really holds dear to sort of like what we work on here at Castle, which is really just helping more people get started with NFTs and be able to collect NFTs by pooling money together with friends and family. I'm sure everyone here has been in some sort of alpha chat where people talk about like, hey, there's this new project minting, or there's this new thing that you want to get into. And so being able to pool money together to gain exposure to those digital assets while also reducing individual risk and kind of just having fun with your friends is something that we're seeing a lot more happen, especially in the collective ownership space. And these are generally very unstructured and either set up just sort of casually or as like a syndicate fund. And the backstory of really how we started with Castle is that we were just like, collecting NFTs with a bunch of friends. We've heard about people sharing like MetaMask seed phrases, or like, we were just like collecting assets and using a Google Sheet to track them. And we realized that this is something that quite a lot of people are doing out there today. And, using Gnosis Safe or using various tools where you can actually leverage the smart contract technology to do this provides that greater access to more people. So jumping into a couple of examples more deeply, collector DAOs obviously is, again, a very notable one where they're focusing on acquiring cultural collectibles for their community and distributing the ownership of various high-ticket digital assets amongst all community members. And oftentimes, these collector DAOs are tokenized and they operate like a standard DAO. So some of the notable examples out there include Pleaser DAO, Flamingo DAO, who I have some of their NFTs shown up here, Fingerprints DAO, and Crisis DAO, which is one of the DAOs that we work with over at Castle. And I think some of you guys may or may not know the backstories to these. Pleaser DAO is like a really interesting one where initially it started as just a bunch of people trying to come together to bid on one of People Pleaser's initial NFTs. And then they just like got a bunch of people to pool a ton of ETH really quickly on the internet. Some of them knew each other, some of them didn't. And then they formed as a DAO, and now their main mission is to basically collect extremely highly culturally relevant items and then fractionalize them to the public. So most notably, they purchased things such as like the Doge NFT, and they fractionalized that. They purchased the Wu-Tang Clan album and fractionalized that as well. And then, yeah, a couple other examples of like Fingerprints, Flamingo, and Crisis are more just like general NFT collector DAOs where they collect just a lot of like blue chip NFTs, and then they have like proposals and investments that they make together as a group. Another interesting example that some of you guys may or may not know about is this DAO called Ape DAO, which was actually started by someone that goes by the name of Kylo Ren NFT. And he initially created this to fractionalize 49 of his Bored Apes plus one of his CryptoPunks and form this Ape DAO. And the initial sale was raised in ETH in exchange for the Ape DAO token, which was then used to acquire additional Bored Ape Yacht Club assets. And in January, the DAO eventually started holding 81 Bored Apes, 81 Mutant Apes, and 34 Kennel Clubs, along with a bunch of other types of NFTs, and they were actually the third largest Bored Ape holder. And what's really interesting about this group is they actually have implemented a lot of really unique systems for providing value and exiting out of the DAO. So they implemented a buyback program as well as a burn system for their Ape token. And earlier this year, they actually began listing and selling their own assets via like a bidding/purchasing website that they built. And this was done using their Ape token. And all of the profits from exiting out of their Ape assets was eventually returned and allowed the DAO members to actually exit for profit. And what's really interesting about this is that if you kind of go back to the last slide, you can see that their Ape token was trading at a 50% discount to its underlying book value. And when they actually started selling these assets, they actually got quite a lot of liquidity that they actually allowed the existing holders to claim in ETH. And it was actually like real tangible value that they were returning back to all of the DAO holders. And so if you see kind of like from the initial launch of the token all the way through, basically like it held very flat despite being in like November, December, we were going through like a peak in the tokens. And then in February, when they actually announced that they were going to sell their Ape assets and allow Ape holders, or Ape token holders to claim that for ETH, people realized that they were like very severely undervalued. I think it was like 50% below the book value of all of the assets they were holding. Mostly due to just like liquidity and awareness of this DAO. But then once people heard about this, they actually started buying the Ape tokens and it spiked quite a lot in value. And it started trading at the fair value of all of those assets. And so they started selling out all of the different Ape assets that they had, and then they put that they put that ETH into a liquidity pool, and they actually allowed people to exit for a profit in ETH. So shifting over a little bit to talking about the different types of tools in the DAO space, or in the NFT and DAO space. I borrowed some of these next two slides from 1KX. Didn't feel like making a whole brand new DAO landscape slide. But overall, some of the most notable ones is like for formation and legal. I think syndicates, open law, and tribute have done a really great job for helping these folks set up and have the right proper frameworks. For funding, Mirror and Juicebox, as well as a little bit of what we do at Castle is really great for that. Treasury management, Gnosis Safe, obviously, who just presented before me, as well as Castle, Prism, and a few other sort of multi-sig providers really help with treasury management. Payroll and financing is obviously done through Utopia, Parcel, Multis, and they've really gotten a lot of support there. And then governance can be done on Tally, Compound, and marketing community is obviously done through Discord, Telegram, Twitter, and things like that. And then on the NFT side, obviously, like, a lot of folks are just minting or going through some of the existing marketplaces like OpenSea as well as Gem, fractionalizing using tools like Fractional or providing liquidity in NFTX and NFTFi, and analytics and portfolio management is also another big category where people are using a lot of tools like Nansen, Wegme.io, and things like that. So jumping over to a couple of other types of NFT groups, obviously collector DAOs is one category, but there's a bunch of different groups that I can't go through this presentation without mentioning. Some of the most interesting projects that I kind of want to call out are like CCO projects such as Nouns. Decentralized projects like Loot are extremely interesting, where they actually have put out like a great initial concept and have spawned a really awesome community of builders who are really trying to make the project work and building on top of this decentralized idea. And then NFT projects and communities themselves, such as like Proof Collective, are another great example of NFT groups. And today, a lot of DAOs and communities are also forming using NFTs as a new method of access. And like Water and Music is a great example where Cherie had a really great like music article and blog and community, and actually like when NFTs started booming, she joined Seed Club and now has issued NFTs for her music community and is sort of more Web3 based. And so kind of jumping into some of the projects, obviously I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Nouns, but this one I think is probably one of the more interesting ones and actually kind of paved the way for a lot of the projects today, where many new NFT projects are forming as a DAO or collective, community, group, whatever you want to call it, where all the members actively participate, contribute, and or govern the treasury. And Nouns was one of the first projects that really pushed this, where all of the ETH raised from the sale of the Nouns go into a massive treasury where all the Noun community holders get to vote on what they do with it, and they use this generally to drive and push forward the goal of the DAO. And then lastly, a couple of emerging types of NFT groups that I think are really interesting that we'll start to see pan out over the next couple of years is music, film, galleries and museums, and enterprise. So with music, I think this is actually extremely interesting. Songcamp and Chaos, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they're a great example where they've actually formed a collective of over 70 musicians to release music NFT packs together, and Chaos Packs is something that came out fairly recently, and you can sort of like purchase it almost like NBA Top Shot style. And there's a strong use case also for like new age music labels. Some of my friends are like founders over at Catalog, and they mentioned that there's a couple of record labels that are popping up, and you can kind of think about this as a way where a few people start to collect different types of music NFTs or start to work with Web3 native artists, and they can actually start to really decentralize the way that a music label operates, not only from the sort of label side, but also from the community and the marketing side of things. Film is also another really interesting category, as well as other media types as a whole, but I think music and film are sort of the two most notable ones that are starting to gain a little bit of traction. One of the groups that we work with at Castle is called Next Hollywood, where they're an example of a film collective, and they're currently going out there and minting and collecting various types of film NFTs. And you can kind of think about a lot of different studio or sort of like production groups forming in the Web3 space around these different types of media opportunities. Galleries and museums is an interesting one that I actually kind of like bumped into a real life example for. I'm not sure if any of you guys are from the Netherlands, but I was just in Amsterdam last week before coming to ETHCC, and I went to the Mocha Museum, which is a really like standard museum. They have like a ton of Banksy art, and it was really cool being there. And they had like an NFT exhibition. I've seen a couple of these before, but it was cool to see like an actual museum collect NFTs themselves and put that on display. And I think a lot of people that I talk to are debating like, all right, what's the first NFT that's going to actually start showing up in the Louvre and all of that. And then enterprise is extremely interesting as well, one that's maybe flying a little bit under the radar. Obviously, there's like a lot of big companies getting into the NFT space, such as like Nike with the acquisition of Artifact, and they're issuing NFTs. Time Magazine, Adidas, they're all sort of like partnering or issuing NFTs themselves. But it's also interesting to see that there's quite a lot of enterprises out there starting to just collect NFTs. If you recall, like last year, or I think earlier this year, Visa acquired a CryptoPunk, and we've also talked to a handful of like companies in the Web3 space who are just like starting to buy up NFTs and holding it on their books. And then just to put some visuals to it, as I mentioned, at the Mocha Museum, on the right here, or sorry, on the left here, they have like a couple of different NFTs that they've purchased up themselves, alongside Banksy art, Kaz, and a lot of notable artists. And yeah, this is just a sort of fun example that I wanted to share because I just thought it was really cool that a massive gallery holding a ton of Banksy art also had like an NFT exhibition, and it's really cool to kind of see that move forward. So to sort of like wrap up a little bit, some of the top benefits of Web3 groups today is really just like having new opportunities to create, experiment, and learn. I think a lot of these groups are really pushing forward like what it means to operate in the NFT space, and finding ways to really push the space forward, and different things that they can actually do with NFTs, and providing utility beyond sort of like your standard NFT roadmap. The other great opportunity is that they're internet native, and you can really form them with anyone and anywhere. I think, again, Pleaser DAO is a really great example where it was just a bunch of people fairly random on the internet that sort of knew each other, that started just pinging all of their friends to come together to purchase this one asset, and it formed into one of the largest collector DAOs today. And then I think the other great thing is that it enables greater access to resources. I think for the overall narrative of collective ownership and what we're kind of seeing with NFTs, there's various options for fractionalization and buying NFTs with friends. But with NFTs itself, it really created a bit more of this need for social and collective ownership, because a lot of times if you want to get into blue chip NFTs, they are higher value assets where a lot of times not a single person would want to put up 100K, 200K, 300K themselves to own that blue chip asset, and being able to split on that with friends and have a fairly significant stake in something that's also a little bit more of a social and fun asset is really awesome. And for the sort of like operator side, forming as a group has quite a ton of benefits to being able to actually go out and build things, market things, and really start to operate within the space. And then lastly, some of the notable challenges with NFT groups, or just Web3 groups as a whole, that we see is like one, decision making, mobilizing and managing a treasury is actually still quite difficult. This is some of the stuff that we're trying to help support here at Castle with treasury management specifically. But we're seeing like with groups, a lot of times coming up with an idea, getting everyone to align on that idea, and then actually going into whether you're a multi-sig wallet or like an EOA or hardware wallet and actually like making the trade and doing all those steps takes quite a while, especially with a larger group of people. And it's something that is extremely difficult and sort of one of the counter arguments against groups, because they inherently won't be able to move as fast as an individual who has just decided like, hey, I'm gonna go out and buy a CryptoPunk, or hey, I'm gonna go invest in Axes and just like start to lend them out. Another big one is legal structure, taxes, and regulations. I think this one obviously is a very hot topic, but one that sometimes flies under the radar depending on the types of groups that you talk to. Again, a lot of really great companies are working on this type of stuff, such as like Open Law, Syndicate, and Tribute, and they've done quite a lot of legwork to really make this compliant for everyone. But a lot of times when we actually talk to some of the groups, especially at the friend group level, they just decided, hey, I just want to buy some NFTs with my friends, and they're not really thinking about like what are the tax implications, what is like the right structure to do this in advance. And I think that this is a really big topic that's going to be super important to making sure that we do this in a way that people don't get in a lot of trouble down the line. And then the last thing is actually really just like long-term sustainability, revenue generation, and like finding more things to do in the NFT space or the Web3 space as a whole with your group. Right now, for friends or some of these DAOs, a lot of times it's just like collecting various types of NFT assets or like issuing NFTs themselves. And I think that's kind of going to get us so far in terms of where we'll actually be able to see these groups sustain themselves. You can't really just live on pure speculation forever, and so being able to find alternative ways to actually like generate revenue or just like do things, whether it's purely for fun, entertainment, or enjoyment purposes, is going to be extremely important to making sure that more of these groups really thrive and continue to form and grow and work in the long run. Cool, so that's basically it for my presentation. Thank you all for coming and listening to it. If you're interested in asking any questions, feel free to ask right now. You can contact me or us at Castle on Twitter, and yeah, I'll end it off there.
Really quick, so you mentioned like the legal framework, and with people that are like spread out globally, and I know it's a like super vast question, right? But what would be like a quick answer, like if 3 people living in 3 different continents would want to do a DAO legally?
Sorry, could you repeat that last bit?
Yeah, sure. If they would want to get NFTs, buy to get NFTs together, what would you recommend really quickly?
For like legal setup?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the easiest one that we see, in my opinion, would be something like Syndicate. Like obviously they have their whole like investment club structure and a lot of the legal stuff figured out, and that's actually kind of like what we recommend to folks who want to have the proper structure with Castle, where like we help with treasury management. We don't touch as much of the tokenization and like legal setup, and so that one's sort of more easy to set up for anyone. And we've seen just like various groups of friends say, hey, we're going to go set up on Syndicate, and then start using various other tools to be able to go and start collecting NFTs as a group. If you are looking to do something a little bit more high touch, I think I've had a couple of conversations this week with folks, and like I think Tribute and like Open Law has done like a really great job where they only work with I think like 15 DAOs today, but they're like extremely high touch in terms of like being very opinionated in how you set up your DAO and very forward thinking. But those DAOs are a little bit more on the like higher end of like Flamingo DAOs of the world, where they need to go through and really think about like how is every single investor in the DAO going to be impacted. How is this going to actually impact them from like their local tax situation, depending on where they're situated in the world, and how does the actual formation of the DAO from a legal structure standpoint impact that?
Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. I guess if there's no other questions, yeah, thanks again for listening to my talk, and hope everyone has a great day.